Speak to the gentleman from Pennsylvania for a moment. He asked what will happen with various amendments. I offered an amendment last week. It's very, very likely I withdraw that amendment in favor of this amendment by Mr. Garrett and myself that's supported by the White House, by Treasury, that maintains the status quo for these small caps, non-accelerated filers up to 75 million, and makes a study for those up to 250 million. So we will not disturb the status quo. We'll maintain the same consumer investor protections that are there now under 404B, but we'll move forward and see if we can make this more sensible going forward.
If the gentleman yield?
If I have time, I will.
You know, I hear that you all are conversing with the White House. I wasn't aware the White House was a human. Are you identifying someone in the White House that is human? There were 29,000
I'll take back my time, yes. I've spoken to Mr. Emanuel 3 times in the last 5 days.
Who?
Mr. Rahm Emanuel.
And what seat does he occupy here?
I'm letting you know there are other people in the government who support this position.
I see.
Is there further discussion? I would recognize myself. Let me just say to my friend, whether or not once one has entered the White House, one continues to be fully human is not a subject that this committee has to adjudicate. So that we'll take a pass on that. I recognize myself in opposition to the amendment, but first I do appreciate what the gentleman from Jersey is trying to do. I know my colleague Sheraton. He made an important point, and I'd like to, a major defense of this amendment, which I'm going to vote against, but I did note that a major defense was that it didn't disturb the status quo. The earlier amendment the gentleman mentioned would in fact do that. I would yield to them. Does the gentleman ask for unanimous consent to withdraw that amendment?
I would ask for unanimous consent.
Is there objection? The chair hears none, so the
Thank you.
original Adler amendment is now withdrawn. By the way, we needed unanimous consent because it's already gone to a roll call. Ordinarily, you don't need that. So that amendment is now withdrawn, and I appreciate that on the part of the gentleman. Let me say, here's my problem. First of all, the gentleman from Alabama talked about the transition from 75 million to above. My guess is it might deter some of those transitions. If moving from 75 million to 76 million is as burdensome as people say, you may be deterring people from growing. I think that people have exaggerated the burden, but if you really believe it's so burdensome, then people may be incentivized to stay under the 75 million. Secondly, I do remember the competitive argument that people are leaving the country. I don't think, a lot of the IPOs at the time were being done in Hong Kong by Chinese companies. I do not think it was Sarbanes-Oxley that drove Chinese companies to do IPOs in Hong Kong. It was also the case that there was some attraction by the Financial Services Authority in England, we were told, because of their light touch regulation. The head of the FSA did announce earlier this year that the era of light touch regulation is over in England. But the basic point I would make is this. I agree, they're not now being regulated. And it was the case that the SEC had been mandated, and I remember our former chairman, Mike Oxley, making this very clear, they were mandated to come up with rules that would make it much less burdensome for the smaller companies. And the idea was a moratorium pending the development of such rules that would make it less burdensome. This amendment does substantially change that because it says rules schmools, they'll never be covered. I think that's an error. I agree that it is not appropriate to cover them until there are appropriate lighter touches, to borrow from the English a concept they're no longer using and probably won't mind if we do. But I would not like to make it permanent. So I think it is a mistake to make it permanent. I would also say that, you know, Sarbanes-Oxley has taken a lot of bumps. I believe it has been an important pro-investment factor by increasing confidence. The gentleman, Illinois, I'll yield to him if he wished me to yield.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that as someone who's been on the board of directors of a privately held company that was considering going public, the burdens of SOX compliance are a real consideration, and I support this amendment.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question is on the amendment. Gentlemen, I'll yield to
Mr. Chairman, when I was talking about the transition period, I certainly did not say that it would discourage companies from growing. What I was
no, I said that. I didn't excuse the but I said that if it's so burdensome, then it certainly would.
Well,
what
I was trying to point out, and I think maybe there's a general agreement, as companies go above 75 million, then there are new compliance costs and requirements. And I'm simply saying that this committee or the SEC is going to have to address that because companies do come out of compliance.
I appreciate it. Let me take back my time.
And it's just a legitimate practical problem.
The question is now on the Adler amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Excuse me. On the Garrett amendment. I apologize.
Garrett Adler
The
amendment.
question is now on the Garrett Adler amendment. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, but we are going to have a roll call. So members joining will signify. We will have a roll call. That's ordered. Mr. Lee, do you have an amendment?